Ahislatla and cha isquis chastenma and chaspaus talichast and cha isquis sistichu shnimipu tum and cha insulchin snikes mistum. Hello, my friends. My Indian name is Chastenma. My English name is LoVina Louie. I come to you from the Coeur d'Alene and Nez Perce tribes from my mom, Jeannie Louie. I come to you from the Okanagan and Lakes bands of the Colville Confederated Tribes from my dad, Deb Louie. And I am a descendant of Chief Morris Antelope from the Coeur d'Alene tribe and Chief Manuel Louie from the Incanate band in Osuyus, BC.
Thank you. Can you tell us a little bit about your work?
Yes. So I have been working with youth and families for the last 25 years. And the reason why I work with youth and families, and currently I am a consultant with the Native Wellness Institute, and we do a lot of work with historical and generational trauma. And the reason I believe that I do this work is because when I was younger, when I was growing up in an alcoholic home, growing up on our reservation and seeing all of the alcohol related deaths and the cirrhosis, having uncles die of cirrhosis at 38, 40, just really young. My own sister dying in an alcohol related car wreck. I always wondered why. Like, why are we like this? Why do I go to more funerals than my white friends? We grew up on the reservation. We went 15 miles to school, to a white school, starting in 7th grade, and they were different. They didn't have all the social and economical problems that we did. And so, when I started going to school in that white school, I just had to try to pretend like I was okay, that I was like them, that I got good grades, I did sports, I tried to be what I thought was normal, coming from, a lot of hurt and pain. And so what really changed my life is I went to Haskell. And Haskell is an all-Indian junior college in Lawrence, Kansas. And when I went to Haskell, I learned about the Sand Creek Massacre. I learned about Wounded Knee. I learned about the Cherokee Trail of Tears. But I think what impacted me the most at Haskell was that they had graveyards of children who were taken from their families and they were sent to those boarding schools. And they died there. And I didn't know that. I didn't know that that had happened to my people. I used to go to youth conferences and young people would stand up from the Dene Nation, the Navajos, and they would introduce themselves in their language and they would introduce themselves in their whole lineage. And I remember sitting in that chair thinking, why can't I do that? Why can't I introduce myself? I don't even know my language. And so when I was at Haskell, I learned about the real history of America. And I understood why my parents drank. I understood why my uncles died. I understood why everybody around me was hurting so bad that they had to drink. I understood why my uncle molested me. And I learned that in those boarding schools there was sexual abuse, there was physical abuse, there was emotional abuse, spiritual abuse. And so when I stood at Haskell in front of those graves of children who never got to hug their moms, their dads, who never got to go home, when I stood in front of those graves, I committed to those children that I would never drink, that I would never do drugs, that I would learn my language. Even if I could only say, Hislatla and cha isquis chastenma and chaspaus talichast, even if that's all I could say, I would learn. I would go home and I would learn my culture and I would learn how to sweat and learn how, whatever it meant to be Indian, that I would do it. And so I went home from Haskell, my sister and I sat down on the bed with my mom and dad and I forgave them for drinking and for fighting and I told them, I forgive you. And then I understood why. And I committed the rest of my life to healing. How do we heal from historical trauma? And I developed a program called Rock in the Res. And I realized this year during the pandemic that for 25 years I've harnessed my grief, and I've poured it back into my people, into our young people, and I've tried to give them hope, and I've tried to help them heal. And so I thought that if I could do a program where I taught kids, what happens when you drink and drive, I did mock car crashes. We did community events where we brought in actors and actresses and, native brown people who could teach our kids, right? Because all year they see white teachers. And I wanted them to see their own people successful. And so that's what we did. And we brought in songwriters, we brought in singers, we brought in hip hop artists, and we danced and we sang and we learned about, how do we express ourselves? We made short films, we made music videos. We just poured our creative energy into Rock in the Res. And so when it hit year 10 of Rock in the Res, my niece, who was 9 months old when my sister died in that alcohol-related car wreck, my niece was 9 years old, and I seen a shift. All of our stories were about drugs and alcohol and dying in the beginning, but at year 9, it shifted. And those kids talked about love and light and hope and faith. And their songs were different. And then we started putting more culture and language into, our programming. And that's what I did for this year was year 22 of Rock in the Res. And, now the kids that started the drum group, Shy and Andy, those were my kids. Wow. 20 years ago, those were my kids that I helped. And now their kids are going through Rock in the Res. So we're seeing that second generation of healing.
And that's how it starts, right?
Yeah.
When I think about intergenerational trauma, and when we talk about it with a lot of people, the best way I can describe it is filling the shoes you've never had. And how do you learn how to be a parent? How do you learn how to put forward your best foot for your children and their children when it was never done from you, when it was taken away from you? Mm-hmm. And programs like yours are so important for Indigenous communities and Indigenous youth, that we can refine that link between communities, that we can create new bridges and connections between generations.
Yeah.
And we've had to do that, and it's been hard, but we're starting to do that. And programs like yours are the reason why.
Yeah, and so you guys were at the Core Center, right? Yeah. You guys, 15 years ago, I sat with my white boss, who I love with all my heart, who supported me and backed me and fought for me. I mean, she helped me trust white people. I mean, she was a beautiful sister to me. But 15 years ago, we dreamed of a place for our kids. We dreamed that one day our kids would have a place to call their own. And this, in 2020, in January of 2020, I did the opening prayer for the Core Center. And we have a place for our kids. And it's beautiful. It's a gym and classrooms and a football field and a water park.
Yeah, we saw the water slide coming in. Heather was like, they have a slide there. I thought it was a health center. I'm like, the hospital's got a water slide.
I know. But that was, I've seen my dream for our children come true. And now as a consultant, now I just do healing work with the Native Wellness Institute, and we do trauma-informed care, and, we do wellness and self-care. And I mean, I literally have handed it over to my people, to the children that I've raised. And now they're the leaders. Now they're the ones who are making a difference. And I can now spread my wings and go, international and national doing healing work. And it's been the most beautiful journey, to be able, like you said, when there were times when my sister died, when my dad sat us down and said, if I've never told you I love you, I love you. Because I don't know if Dolly knows that I loved her. Because of all of his trauma from Vietnam and boarding schools, my dad couldn't say those words. But today my mom and dad turned 75 and 76 years old. They've been married for 54 years. And this morning when I talked to him, I said, I love you, Dad. And he said, I love you. So we can heal. My dad can heal. He can say, I love you now. And my kids have never seen me drink. They've never seen me do drugs. And they hear I love you every day from Dwayne and I. We've broken the cycle. And all across Indian country, children are being born with no drugs or alcohol. We have broken those cycles, and it's beautiful. And I'm excited about life now. I'm excited to be Indigenous. I'm excited. I look in the mirror in the morning and I say, how am I going to make my ancestors proud today? You're making your ancestors proud today. You're telling our stories. Creator called you. He called Heather. He picked you to tell our stories. And you're a blessing to our people. And so you will be in our prayers as you go on this journey. Because not everybody is selected by Creator and told like you were to just go do it, Not everybody listens like Dwayne and you. Like you guys are like, okay.
Sure, why not? I told Creator, I said, man, I don't want to be an electrician for the next 3 months. What should I do? Well, I got something else I can get up to.
But isn't it amazing when you ask Creator, like when you humble yourself, when you ask Him, He'll respond. And that's what He's done my entire life. I get down on my knees and I just, help me, Creator, show me. And He just leads me.
Well, thank you. Do you have any final words you'd like to say to Indigenous youth? Because you spoke to me and what you've done for my generation, right? I'm probably the same age as those kids who grew up and you taught. What do you have to say, I guess, to the other Indigenous youth who are going to see this and are around the country in Canada?
I want our youth to know that you're leaders now. You don't have to wait to grow up. You can do it now. Take charge of your life. Look in the mirror and say, how am I going to make my ancestors proud? How am I going to live for all the children who didn't get to go home? What am I going to do? And do it. Go for it.
Thank you so much for sitting down with us today. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.